3 days of the tournament thus far for March Madness, and what madness it's been. Exciting stuff. We got upsets all over the place in the March Madness college basketball tournament. Love it. That's why we call it the Madness. We got a 15 seed representing from Jersey City, St. Peter's College. Shout out to those guys over there. Moving on to the Sweet 16. That's exciting stuff to see. I think, again, we got some double-digit seeds that are moving on to the Sweet 16. Get the powerhouses. Kansas, they moved on. Number one seed, Gonzaga, they're the number one seed. They're moving on. I think we got another number one seed that might be playing today. But nevertheless, we saw one fall. So the defending champs, Baylor Bears, out. So it's exciting again to see the madness is fully upon us. So speaking of the madness, we had some madness in the Stock Showdown 2022 Bracket Challenge. I want to bring it to you live here. Now that all the data has settled, let's take a look at the live bracket so we can see what transpired in round one. And in round one, just looking at consumer cyclical right now, I'm going to zoom in and focus as best I can on this so you can see it at home. We had the number one seed, Amazon, move on to the second round with a 10.81% move to Marriott's 5.91. So strong performance by both companies. However, Amazon doubled up Marriott, moving on to round two, where they are facing Airbnb that had a monster week, up 15% on the week, where Lowe's, that's nothing to scoff at 6%. So, but it's not enough as Airbnb throttles Lowe's and moves on to take on Amazon in round two. Let's look and move on. We got the number 5 versus 12 matchup. Alibaba, it's the Chinese Amazon, basically, e-commerce company over there in China. It had some volatility last week, 2 weeks ago, heading into, I think, the end of last week, which would have been around March 11th. And it struggled in the first 2 days of the week. Nevertheless, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And Alibaba Group finished very strong. No upset there. Alibaba tearing up booking holdings, basically tripling booking holdings for the week. So it's Alibaba with almost a 25% move. They're moving on to round two, where they're going to take on Toyota Motor Corporation. Toyota Motor took down TJX. I was a big TJX fan. TJX positive for the week, but Toyota at 8.5% for the week. Strong performance by Toyota. So it's going to be Alibaba versus Toyota 4-5 matchup there. Moving on to the bracket, we have Home Depot. They took on Ford Motor Company. And again, very strong performance by both companies. Home Depot, though, edges out Ford Motor Company 7.5 to about 5. So it's going to be Home Depot, the number 3 seed. I took that one. But on this next one, I didn't take this one because you had another China-based company, e-commerce company, JD.com, with another, 35% in week is astounding, because the previous week was, again, a rather bad week. In those first couple of days of this past week, JD.com, like some of those other China-based companies, we'll get into another one here in the communication services bracket, struggled. However, JD.com is victorious over Nike 35-7. So it's going to be JD.com versus Home Depot in round number 2. And then finally, the last matchup in consumer cyclical, you had Starbucks at 8.3%, took down McDonald's at 5.31. So it's going to be Starbucks moving on, where they'll face Tesla. Had a strong week. Again, not about how you start, how you finish. Tesla, I think, was down in the first couple days of trading this week, but Tesla roared back to take down General Motors 13, almost 14 to about 8. So it's going to be Tesla versus Starbucks in consumer cyclical. So let's take a look and move on to the next part of the bracket. That's communication services. You had Baidu, big upset. Again, that's another Chinese-based company. They had a very strong performance in the latter part of the week, and it's Baidu taking down Alphabet's, the number 1 seed out of communication services, is out. So it's going to be Baidu, the number 16 seed, that throttled Alphabet 25 to about 5. and it's going to be Baidu versus Charter Communications, the number 9 seed. Charter Communications at 3.22, edged out T-Mobile at 2.1. I'm sorry there, Patrick. Big T-Mobile fan, and I'm doing great things over there, Patrick, at T-Mobile, but it's going to be Charter Communications moving on over T-Mobile. Next up, we have America Mobile, SAB, the number 12 seed. They were 5.23% gain on the week. Comcast only 4.2. So it's going to be the number 12 seed, America Mobile, moving on to round 2, where they'll face another double-digit seed, and that was Snap Inc., up almost 20% on the week. Took down Verizon Communications, which was down 4.22%. As you can see, and if you've been following along, Verizon is the first company that actually had a negative performance during the week, down 4.22%. Everybody else thus far has been up, and up considerably for the week. Next up, you had Walt Disney at 6.49, 6.5%, taken down by NetEase Inc. at big week by NetEase, about 14%. So nearly doubling up Walt Disney. So it's going to be NetEase. I struggled on this one because I took Walt Disney. My bracket is busted for sure, which I'm sure, again, a lot of others are singing the same tune. Looking at the next one, we had another Chinese-based company, Sea Limited, the number 11 seed. Strong performance, 35% on the week. I mean, some of these numbers are just astounding. AT&T, like the dividend, strong dividend out of AT&T at almost like 7%, but it's not going to get you huge moves. 0.13%, so negligibly changed by AT&T. So it's going to be Sea Limited, the number 11 seed, taking on the number 14 seed, NetEase and Communication Services. And finally, we have Netflix, that was up about 12% on the week, took down, got another negative there. Activision Blizzard down 1.93%. So it's going to be Netflix, the number 7 seed, taking on the company formerly known as Facebook, Meta Platforms up about 15% or so. Relix, I took Relix because I just didn't think that Meta, because they were continuously setting 52-week lows, had a chance on that one, but it's going to be Relix taking a back seat, and they're out of the tournament as Meta Platforms moving on to round 2. Over to the other side of the bracket, we had the consumer defensive industry. We had the number 1 seed out of consumer defensive, Walmart, out of the tournament as they are taken down by Keurig Dr. Pepper. Walmart 2.37. Keurig Dr. Pepper edges them out by about 0.4%. I believe that was probably the tightest matchup thus far. So it's going to be KDP, Keurig Dr. Pepper, the 16 seed. Moving on, where they'll face Diego PLC, as Diego PLC took down Target Corporation in the first round, about 13-9 on that one. Next matchup, we had PepsiCo, the number 5 seed, versus British Tobacco. And again, another tight one, but it's going to be Pepsi, the number 5 seed, victorious over British Tobacco. It was about 6% to 5% on that one. So PepsiCo will face Costco Wholesale Corporation in round 2. Costco was victorious over Altria Group. About 6.5 or so to about 2 1/3. So it's going to be the number 4 versus number 5 matchup in round 2 there, Pepsi versus Costco. That should be an interesting one. We have Mondelez, the maker of Oreos, Mondelez International, parent company, taking on, they were the number 14 seed, big upset there, taking down the number 3 seed, Coca-Cola. It was a tight one, about 0.25% between those two, but it's going to be Mondelez International moving on, where they will face Philip Morris. Philip Morris is the number 6 seed. They took down Estee Lauder, another tight one, about 0.75% separated those two roughly. So it's going to be Philip Morris, the number 6 seed, versus the number 14 seed, Mondelez International. And the last matchup out of consumer defensive is going to be in the second round, Anheuser-Busch. They took down Unilever. It was 8.5 to about 3 on that one. And they're going to take on the number 2 seed, Procter & Gamble. Procter & Gamble was victorious over Colgate-Palmolive. It was Procter & Gamble at 4.84%. Colgate down 2.13. So thus far, that's only 3 teams that actually had a negative performance during the week. And then finally, our last bracket, or our last industry of the 2022 Stock Showdown Bracket Challenge, was technology. And that is another number 1 seed fallen to a 16 seed. That's 3 16 seeds. You want madness? This is the madness. 3 16 seeds moving on to round 2. It was SAP, up at 7.13%, the 16 seed, taking down the overall number one seed, Apple, in the tournament. They were up 6% on the week, but not enough as SAP moves on and takes down Goliath on that one. And they'll face the number 9 seed, Adobe. Adobe was up about 9% on the week. Oracle only up 5%. So it's going to be Adobe versus SAP in round 2. We have ASML Holding, the number 5 seed versus Intel. It wasn't, again, overly convinced on Intel heading in. Again, I know they pay a nice dividend, pretty stable, blue bud company. But again, I didn't think the growth was there for the week. So I did take ASML Holding on that one. And they had a really strong performance of 16% on the week. Intel only 3.5%. So it's going to be ASML Holding. Moving on to take on AMD, Advanced Micro Devices. AMD was successful in taking down the number 4 seed Taiwan Semiconductor in round 1 at about 9% to about 5%. So it's going to be AMD versus ASML Holding. Next matchup we're going to see out of technology is the number 3 seed NVIDIA with a huge performance, about 20% on the week. Took down Qualcomm, which was only up about 1%. So a thrashing by NVIDIA over Qualcomm, and they'll face Salesforce in the next round, Salesforce.com. They were up about 10.5% to Broadcom's 5.63%. So it's going to be NVIDIA versus Salesforce in round 2. And the last matchup of the bracket is going to be Accenture PLC, the number 10 seed Accenture. They were about 4%. Cisco only up 2.3%. And they'll take on the number 2 seed Microsoft. Microsoft was up 7.2% to Texas Instruments 5.72%. So those are all the matchups for round 2. Make sure you get in your picks before 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to qualify. And again, to make those picks, you want to go to the Stock Showdown, stock-showdown.com website. What you'd be able to do is hit play now. This is going to bring you to the Google form that you can fill out. And you know what? Tell you what, give you some insight to the picks that I will be making. Put in your email address that you've been using for round 1, and you'll be able to see all of the matchups there. You have, again, out of consumer cyclical, if you go back to the bracket, you can see how they performed in the previous week. Those percentages will always be there. Just again, to give you some context, it's right here, the 10.81, the 5.91. So you'll be able to always see those to see how those companies fared in the previous week. So like I said, you have Airbnb, which was up 15% to Amazon's 10%. Again, extraordinary performance by both companies. Again, you had 64 companies, and of the 64, 61 were positive on the week. And I'm not talking negligibly positive. I mean, a lot of these companies had huge weeks and double-digit weeks. I think, again, a lot had to do with the Fed finally committing to raising interest rates. So they did raise interest rates 0.25% on those Fed funds rates, and forecasting for another 6 throughout the course of the year. So I think, again, that's giving investors now confidence of what the Fed's going to be doing. I think, again, you're seeing the volatility in the oil markets. I think there's been an enormous amount of selling in that regard. We're not playing energy in these industries, but I think you're going to see more volatility heading in to the subsequent rounds here. So be very careful on your picks here. But it's going to be hard for me to, again, bet against Amazon. I said the exact same thing in round 1. I'm going to do the exact same thing in round 2 here. But again, I would go with Amazon on that one. But do your due diligence. Like I always say, is pull up Yahoo Finance, do a side-by-side comparison. And again, this is just giving you an example. I have Amazon on one side. I got Airbnb here on the right. You don't have to do it this way. You could just blindly pick for all you care, I'm sure. But if, again, you're in it to win it and you want to do your research and look to see which companies are going to fare well for the coming week, see how they performed over the last 5 days. You can see a 5-day chart for both companies, and rest assured, both companies have kind of the same movement over the last 5 days as they kind of, again, bottomed out on that Monday, where, again, they were both, I think, negative for the week after 1.5 days or so, and then really turned it on heading in to the latter parts of the week. And I think you're probably going to see that with most charts if you did a side-by-side comparison. And then I think most companies, again, fared well and strongly heading in to Friday's close. With the, again, increased volatility in the market, the uncertainty geopolitically, I would still tread carefully with some of these names. And, again, when we're talking about high flying company names, we're talking high PEs, we're talking high beta numbers. When we're talking about beta, we're talking risk reward. As its comparison to the S&P 500. So again, there's no correlation right now. It doesn't even have it. It's not even applicable with Airbnb as opposed to Amazon that is a beta at 1.11. Yes, it's a little bit more volatile than the S&P as a whole, but the Airbnb doesn't even have one. I would probably go with Amazon on something like this. So that is just one example of the many that you still have out there. We had 32 matchups in round one. Obviously, that gets cut in half with every subsequent round. So we have 16 matchups, 16 of these that you should be doing your due diligence on. So I hope that you take that advantage and do that. So the last thing I want to show everybody is if you go back to the website, let's close this down. Again, fill out your form, pick by pick, and I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to make my own picks, but I'll be back to showcase my picks. But again, this is what you would do: is you go through each industry, make your picks, and move on to the next industry. You have 16 picks to make for round two. All right, now the last thing I want to show all of you is the bracket challenge standings. So click on this last button where it says bracket challenge standings. All right. Now, this will show you how everybody is faring thus far. So there's a lot of people involved in the competition. I want to thank the people that I've podcasted with since October that have been able to participate. In addition, some of my friends and colleagues that were able to get into this year's competition. So thank you to those. And thank you to the students that actually got their picks in for round one. Really appreciate your contribution. It was an assignment. Round two will also be an assignment, as will the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and the championship. So you owe it to yourself if you want to get those points from a grading perspective to get those picks in for round two and the subsequent rounds. So as you can see, I'm not going to go through every single person in here because there is a long list, as you can see, which is very exciting to me, the amount of participants that we do have in this year's competition. But just doing a quick glance to see how everybody has fared thus far. We have two people tied about the top. That would be Mike and Mike. The way that I have this formula built is it's taking the information prior to, I believe, the @ sign in a person's email address and just taking that. So I have two Mikes here. One is Mike Verrett and one is Mike Audie. Again, two podcasters I've had, I think, in the later part of 2021. Both were fantastic guests on the show. Check them out. I think, again, I do have two podcasts out there, one with Mike Audie and one with Mike Verrett. Great stuff out there, but both individuals with 200 points thus far out of the tournament. Now, there were 32 matchups at 5 points apiece, so you're talking 160. No, that's not right. We'll have to double check on the point totals there because if there's 32 matchups, 32 times 5, we're going to have to reconfigure some of the math here to just be able to determine if those numbers are actually accurate, because that is a huge advantage thus far with both individuals at 200. So I'm going to have to circle back on some of these standings because we want to make sure that we're doing this all correctly. Again, we're talking percentage accuracy. I have this formula going right now as far as how, what percent people were able to actually get these right. And if you go down to Mike and Mike, they have 35% accurately picked thus far, which again is not really a good percentage after round one. So we'll take a look at that. So, but it's all on the Stock Showdown website, stock-showdown.com. You can see right now we got the round two countdown going on. We got 1 day and 2 hours and so many minutes, 46 minutes and counting. That means 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow to get your picks in for round two. So feel free, obviously, to reach out to me, Wanderson at stock-showdown.com if you have any questions or concerns with the picks. But hopefully this has been educational and entertaining. It sure has for me. So this is Wandy signing off. God bless.